By default, your brain is unproductive for 64% of working hours, causing you to waste almost 7+ years of your life without even knowing it. But what if there's a way you could reclaim your life? Well, there are 3 science-backed habits that you can implement in your daily life to not just save those years from wasting, but start gaining time for your side business alongside a full-time job. And no, I will not ask you to sacrifice your family time or to delete social media. And if you are 32 years old, you are still not too late to implement these 3 habits and start becoming financially independent in a matter of time. Let me introduce the first scientific technique with a quick story. Back when I was in high school, our teacher wanted us to write an essay. But because it was supposed to be a longer paper, he gave us 1 whole month to finish it. I was a massive procrastinator back then, and since the deadline was so far away, I didn't even think about starting writing yet. Instead, I decided my time was better spent playing video games. Days passed, and the deadline was coming closer and closer, but I hadn't written a single word. About 2 days before we had to turn in our essay, I realized the deadline was so close that I might not be able to finish in time. This is when I went into full-on panic mode. With only 2 days left, I started writing with pure focus. Finishing that paper became my #1 priority, and everything else became secondary. I didn't think about video games or anything else. All of my focus was on that essay. Thankfully, in the end, I managed to finish and turn in my paper in time. And to top it off, I also got a solid grade. This phenomena is called the Parkinson's Law. The law states this: work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. This might sound a bit confusing, but let me explain what it means. If someone gives you 1 week to mow their lawn, it will take you a whole week to do it. If they give you 1 month, it will take you 1 month. And if they give you 1 year to do it, God forbid, it will take you 1 whole year. Essentially, the more time you have to complete something, the longer it will take you to finish it. But if a goal or a task does not have a specific deadline set, it will most likely never get done. Most of us make the mistake of thinking that the more time we give ourselves to complete the task, the better the end result will be. However, more often than not, most of that time is spent procrastinating, and only a small portion of it is spent on the thing we want to achieve. So if you know something can be completed in a day, don't give yourself 2 days to finish it. You might think that giving yourself extra time will get you better results, but most of the time is wasted on unimportant things. However, you should be reasonable with the time frame of the deadlines. If you know something will take a week to complete, don't set the deadline for tomorrow. This may sound obvious, but it is something people do when they first hear about the Parkinson's Law. But you can still try to push the limits of what is possible, and maybe you'll find some shortcuts along the way. Worst case scenario is you get some work done, but you need to give it a polish. Now, whether your deadline is too short or too far away, it's still better than no deadline at all, and you will save a lot of time in your life just by giving yourself a deadline. Before I reveal the second habit, I want to ask you a simple question. Do you often find yourself thinking about a project or task you've left unfinished? Maybe you lay awake at night, mulling over your incomplete assignments, or find yourself zoning out on conversations because your mind is still fixated on what's still to be done. If these questions sound familiar, then you've probably been experiencing the psychological phenomenon known as the Zeigarnik effect. And here's the interesting thing. You can use the Zeigarnik effect to your advantage. It can improve your life in a variety of ways, such as having better recall, increased motivation, decreased procrastination, improved test scores, increased productivity, and most importantly, save a lot of time. The concept was first introduced in the 1920s by Russian psychiatrist and psychologist Dr. Bluma Wolfovna Zeigarnik while dining at a restaurant. Dr. Zeigarnik was fascinated by the waiting staff's ability to easily remember long and complex orders. It seemed to take little to no effort at all. But once the orders were filled and paid for, the waiters struggled to remember any details, which intrigued the psychologist. Zeigarnik went on to actively study this psychological tendency, and in doing so, she found that people were more inclined to better recall information about tasks that were still in progress rather than tasks that had been completed. This is thought to be because a completed task is no longer relevant or at the forefront of our minds. There is no longer a need for the subconscious to remind the conscious mind to work toward the goal, and we relax, making it harder to recall the information. This is an interesting concept, right? So what are the practical ways to apply the Zeigarnik effect to your life? Let's say you've got a big project to tackle. Instead of trying to do it all at once, break it down into smaller tasks. Each time you finish one of those tasks, your brain will want to keep going to complete the whole thing. It's like giving yourself little victories along the way. Another way to use the Zeigarnik effect is by setting goals for yourself. When you set a goal, your brain starts working on ways to achieve it, even when you're not actively thinking about it. So, write down your goals, whether it's learning a new skill or saving up for a trip, and watch how your brain kicks into gear to make them happen. The third habit is so important that it was introduced by the President of the United States, Eisenhower. Prior to becoming the 34th president, he managed to remain incredibly productive throughout his life, working his way up the ranks to eventually become the president. His productivity habits has been thoroughly examined, and one of the most valuable strategies attributed to him is the Eisenhower box. It's a simple method to help you avoid procrastination, save time, and prioritize what you should be working on. Here's how it works. You create 4 different boxes with the following categories: urgent and important, tasks to do immediately; important but not urgent, tasks to schedule later; urgent but not important, tasks to delegate to someone else; neither urgent nor important, tasks to eliminate. This simple exercise teaches you to quickly identify the importance and urgency of tasks on your plate and to separate them accordingly. It's often easy to unintentionally procrastinate by doing tasks ourselves which could have been delegated or eliminated altogether. I've found the method to be most helpful when dealing with an overabundance of work. When the amount of tasks is overwhelming, taking a few minutes to arrange and prioritize your tasks according to the logic of the Eisenhower method can be quite helpful. You could use something like an app to truly have a virtual Eisenhower box, or even download a printed copy to fill out with a pen or pencil. If you don't already prioritize the items on your to-do list on a daily or weekly basis, I'd highly recommend you try it out for just a week. But there's still one gigantic issue that everyone faces, and it's this: you now know how you can save 7+ years of your life by applying these habits, but if you are not smart, the time saved will not be helpful in achieving your goals. So make sure you have the habits and mindset of smart people as well. You can develop that by watching this video on screen. See you there.